Okay, the title of my presentation is Journeying Deep, the call of the Catholic Church in China to be more rooted. Okay. When I first left China in the year 2000 to take medical training in the Philippines, China was a rapidly changing country. She was trying to leave behind poverty, dirtiness, and shame to come up to the international stage with a new image, an image full of energy and force. China finally joined the World Trade Organization in 2001 after 15 years of trying. In 2002, most people in China are no longer living in hunger or without shelter. China is ready to move on to the next economic growth. The Catholic Church in China then was in desperate need of almost everything: good formation and theological training for clergy, religious sisters, and lay people, the necessity to integrate belief and daily life, the call to express and live out faith on a social level, to communicate and dialogue for the Catholics with non-Christians. When I returned to China in August 2012, the need of the Catholic Church in China is still vast and urgent, but I also noticed quite a number of differences emerged in the last 10 years. First, theological training in general has improved a lot. Besides, candidates of religious communities and seminarians are now crossing the diocesan and provincial borders, which were not the case previously. Second, the role of the laity in the church becomes more and more indispensable and recognized as such. There is also a general need among lay people to study the Bible and theology beyond catechism level. They make an effort to find time to study theology. They undergo guided retreats and form Christian communities. Third, there is a general awareness that we should deepen our Christian faith within the Chinese context and meanwhile work together. And this is the only way that the Catholic Church in China can have some social impact. On the social level, people's lives has been improved to a certain extent that they are no longer satisfied with being capable of meeting their basic daily needs, but rather to live quality lives. A most common and noticeable thing now in China, as you noticed in the previous two presentations, that in every park and in open spaces, including villages in the countryside, groups of people are dancing and singing and exercising in the evenings and weekends. It seems that China's pace has slowed down, and it is time to get more rooted. Dr. Leopold Li, SVD, Lei Libo, who had been studying Chinese philosophy and now teaching ancient languages in Beijing since 1995, said that China is now experiencing a new period of renaissance. He reckons that every Chinese should get more familiar not only with Asian Chinese culture, but Western as well, to be able to appreciate both and integrate them. I agree wholeheartedly with him. For China to grow in a healthy way to maturity, she has to be more rooted in both Chinese and Western culture and real values like honesty, trust, generosity, compassion, flexibility, and tolerance. I believe that the Catholic Church in China can contribute something in this process. Christian values has to be really integrated into Chinese culture. I'm going to share 4 interrelated points in this presentation that I think the Catholic Church in China should focus on. The call to cooperate among Catholics, the importance of discernment. Third, the necessity to inculcate Christian values. Fourth, the way to dialogue. And finally, for the church to become a house of prayer. First, the call to cooperate among Catholics. I would like to describe the Catholic Church in China with an image. We are like a bucket made of bamboo clappers of different length. How much water this bucket can contain does not depend on the longest bamboo clapper, but on the shortest. The better formed religious communities, seminaries, and dioceses have to help the lesser ones. It is not simply an obligation, but it is our mission and it is a must, the essence of being Catholic. Cooperation here does not mean simply like working together. For example, the dioceses with more priests would send some to the diocese with less, or the better formed religious communities have those in need in terms of like how to organize a general chapter or how to keep the delicate balance between a diocesan religious community, as most of our religious communities in China are, and being independent and autonomous, or getting together sharing formation programs or management skills. These are important, and we have been doing this for a number of years. Now we need to cooperate on a deeper level. By cooperation here, I mean that we work as a team. To put into other words, we are not only doing things together, but are united in the effort to integrate Christian faith and social life for the well-being of both the Catholic Church and the Chinese society. We need to plan our future and putting our resources together. This is difficult to achieve, since there's no organization in China like the Catholic Bishops' Conference to make strategies on the national level, but that does not mean it is impossible. We need a vision that includes others and a genuine spirit of generosity. That is, the spirit of a real missioner to think on behalf of the other. We have to consider the benefit of the local community in need as a priority of our mission, not the benefit of our own. It is by generous giving that we receive, not to receive first, so that we can give. This requires us to think broader than ourselves as individuals and communities. However, we are still in the learning process. We still need to find effective ways to work as a team and to put our resources together. How we shall do so brings out my second point, the importance of discernment. Discernment is vital for the Church in China on both personal and communal levels. This is a point I want to stress the most. The Catholic Church in China needs to grow on several aspects in this regard. First, there is still a rather high percentage of Catholics consider faith as a means to gain things. Those things may not necessarily mean material things. They may refer to spiritual gains, like peace and tranquility. Nevertheless, the focus is on gains and self, rather than on having a relationship with God, on committing one's life in God. Discernment is essential to form responsible believers of authentic faith. Second, some devout Catholics have a sense of superiority or doctrinal security, a somehow better off feeling. This makes it very difficult to form communities of trust, compassion, and tolerance. Father Thomas Green says very well in his book on discernment that humility and charity are essential qualities of truly discerning persons. A soul truly open to the Lord is never marked by angry self-righteousness or restless intolerance. We need to form accommodating and encouraging communities where all types of people feel welcomed and accepted. Third, in the personal and communal decision-making, the focus is on solving emerging problems instead of funding where our inner energy is leading us. So the decision made is not based on strength, as in a good discernment, but on weakness. Meanwhile, communal decision-making becomes following the opinion of the majority, the tyranny of the majority, a way of attaching God's name to what most of the group want, or believe he must want, a way of manipulating God to agree with our convictions concerning action and decision-making. In order to make the Catholic Church in China a discerning community, we need first discerning individuals that are rooted in prayer and intoned with the way that God works. Third, the third point, the necessity to inculcate Christian values. In the 16th century, Matteo Ricci finally brought Christianity into China. He emphasized the inner connections between Christianity and Chinese culture. He did not introduce Christianity as entirely foreign or new, but affirmed that the Chinese people always believed in God, and Christianity is a completion of their faith. They adapted the Chinese Confucian scholars' lifestyle and accommodated the Chinese rites of venerating one's ancestors.
3 minutes.
This approach proved effective. However, it was not accepted easily by the Catholic Church as a whole. The Chinese rites controversy, which had a long negative effect, lasted for several centuries. One of those is that Christianity remains a foreign religion in China up to now. The Catholic Church in China does not have her own theology. There is still a long way to go to fully integrate Christian and Chinese values. The culture Christians in China have been trying to bridge Christianity and Chinese culture on the intellectual level. But many believers, they still approach Christianity from a Western point of view. And there is a gap between culture Christians and believers. I think that in order for Catholicism to be more rooted in China, we Chinese Catholics have to adapt the method of materiality to affirm the values of Chinese culture, to dialogue with Chinese intellectuals, and to make Christianity faith of our very own. The fourth point, the way to dialogue. Dialogue is an attitude in life. It requires openness, honesty, and a humble realization that I'm not holding the whole truth. Real dialogue can only happen between equal partners. In the present age in China, the Chinese Catholics need to have a dialogical attitude in life. The traditional way of evangelization with an emphasis on only baptized Catholics can be saved is no longer theologically correct, and it definitely cannot foster dialogue. The Chinese society in general still does not understand Catholicism. This is partly because of the social and political situations in China, or partly because Catholics are not used to introducing their faith to the general public. Catholicism exists in the margins of Chinese society, but many Catholics still think that others have to come to the Catholic Church to be baptized in order to have eternal life. They try to convince others not to listen to their problems and difficulties first. When Pope Francis was interviewed by Eugenio Scalfari, he said that proselytism is solemn nonsense. You have to meet people and to listen to them. This should be the meaning of evangelization in China, to meet people and to listen to them, to be dialogic partners with others. Finally, to become a house of prayer. Samuel Ballantyne said that the church has no higher calling than to realize its commission to become a house of prayer. Prayer is of itself an act of ministry that ties together God and humanity. He said that prayer is not just a preparatory ritual antecedent to real ministry. It is one of the principal means by which the church participates concretely as a co-worker with God in accomplishing the divine will of the world. The role of the church as a house of prayer is extremely important for the Chinese society. On the one hand, the church has to keep the community and the world in God by proclaiming a transcendent reality that pervades all of life's experiences. By doing so, the church promotes and enables an ongoing dialogue between God and humanity, and helps humanity to turn away from the self and to focus on God in both pain and joy. On the other hand, being committed in prayer enables the Catholic community to have fidelity on earth, to live out God's justice and compassion in different situations. The Catholic Church in China has to be continuously shaped by the reality of God. It then in turn can shape the reality in China. Thank you.
Thank you.